Welcome to RHI Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today we are joined by James Keblis, former director of the Seattle Office of Film and Music. Keblis launched his career in Seattle's music underground, evolving from an 80s skate punk MTV addict into a key organizer, promoter, and advocate. As director, he focused on growing the city's creative economy and led the Seattle City of Music Initiative, the award-winning SeaTac Airport Music Program, and the Seattle Nightlife Initiative, helping shift the city's approach to nightlife toward vibrancy, cultural value, and economic growth. Hey, James, what a great opportunity to talk with you again. You are a legend in my mind in the whole evolution of my understanding of what music cities are. And I'm glad that you're going to be participating with us in Nashville. But why don't you just give a snapshot of your background and your role?
Yeah, Jim, it's such an honor to be here with you, and we've done some really great work together. And I'm happy to talk about my story, but I want to make sure that anyone that's watching this video knows a large part of my story in the latter part anyway, you were involved with. So we did a lot of this stuff together. So it'll be fun to revisit that in Nashville and get the stories of the people that are at the front lines today. I no longer work in music. I work in film production and commercial film production specifically, but I care deeply about music. Music is a big part of what has defined me and my career. I grew up putting on shows and just being part of the scene in Seattle. Got very involved politically. There, a famous musician, the bassist for Nirvana, Chris Novoselic, he, in the mid 90s, started an organization called Jam Pack, Joint Artist Musicians Pack. It was a political action committee then. And it was in response to the city of Seattle's laws against teens dancing. They had this teen dance ordinance as a footloose law and all these crazy things. And it just opened my eyes up to what we could do and how we could respond. Chris used his celebrity and his power and his civic mindedness to really challenge all those things. Hired lawyers, sued the city, won, and I was going to college at the time and decided to turn. I was interested in urban planning, and I was going through all this stuff in the community and in the music scene here in Seattle, and really started thinking about urban planning through the lens of music and thinking about how music can be a tool in urban planning and what matters in a city. It's not buildings, it's not roads, and it's people. People are what matter. And I think about, what brings people together and how do you bring the best out of people? And there's a few ways. Sports is one of the good ones, but music is one of the good ones too. And it's really it remains a powerful force. And so I thought, how could we turn music into an urban planning tool to shape what Seattle's becoming? We were getting some political traction, like I was saying, but I wanted to be proactive and not reactive. And so we started coming up with, you know, political forums and candidates who are running for office. We would say, okay, we believe in a music city in Seattle. What would you do? And really made it a conversation for people to get elected, and then put money and support behind those that really were champions of it, got them, won. And then we created something called the Vera Project, a group of us, which is a youth music and arts center that was started in 1999, and it's actually celebrating we did our first show in 2001, so it's celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And it's an institution in Seattle, and it's a place for young folks to start bands, to be a part of the music community, to find other common interests. It's the center that they run. They get skills. It was one of those things that we decided to do to be proactive, in trying to help define the city. And then from that, we created an Office of Film and Music. It was an economic development agency in the city hall, in the city of Seattle, in the city hall there. And then I ran that for almost 10 years with a strong focus on jobs and wages and business and revenue. We're like a real economic development focus on that thing. And we, through that effort, created what became known as the City of Music Initiative. And we could talk more about that in detail, but spearheaded that. We had great success with that, and helping just, an oppressive stance toward music, in the 90s, to one of not only support, but active, like, growth, and having it come from all walks of life, not just the music community, but from the business community, from education and schools to just everyday folks to tourism and all of those types of things. And so that was kind of my legacy and my mark on the whole thing. I'm involved in an organization now called Sonic Guild that I'm very passionate about. I'm on the board, started in Austin, and it's a community of music lovers that get together and put on events on a regular basis, really special events with emerging artists and talent folks and bringing people together with a shared love of music. And then we take that community and we leverage it to get more fundraising support. Then we give that to artists directly. So we do unconditional $10,000 grants to artists. We do as many as we possibly can. We do touring support. We do all kinds of other things. So we use our love of music to create investments for musicians. We do it in Austin. We do it in Seattle. We have ambitions, of course, to grow into other cities and stuff down the road. But it's one of the ways that I still satisfy my desire to be part of music.
Yeah, well, obviously you've had a big role, and I know that as you mentioned before, the group that you started that you were involved with in the 90s, and part of what was the catalyst for some of your political initiatives was the economic study that you did. And I think what was unique about your study was that you didn't just look at the music itself, but you looked at the songwriters and the producers and the other aspects of the music industry within Seattle. That when people say the music economy, they think about the Taylor Swifts of the world, and that
Yeah.
she makes $1 billion. But what's behind that scene are the songwriters, because she, obviously she didn't write all of her songs, and as many artists don't. But also the stage hands, the sound engineers, the lighting engineers, the people who
Yeah.
are in terms of promotion, and now you have the whole merchandise arm of the music industry with the performers. There's just so many pieces. And I remember your study pointed out the economic impact of music and that whole related field was beyond what the biotech industry was contributing locally.
Yeah, I mean, it was really that was brought. So we knew that we wanted to measure. We knew we wanted to make a statement, and we met this economist, Bill Byers, who had done economic impact studies for other industries, and we went to him and said, he was connected with the University of Washington, and we said, "Hey, would you want to do something with music?" And he took our small idea and really amplified it. He said, "Well, if you want to tell that story, here's how all the things are connected, and map that out for us." And did exactly what you talked about, showed all of the interconnectedness and all of these things need to count. So we raised a bunch of money. I think we paid at the time, this is 2001, and I think 2001. And we paid like $40,000 to do this really comprehensive study. And what it resulted in was an industry in its totality that matched the maritime industry. I mean, it was really like, and this is Seattle, a port city where maritime is a thing. And all of a sudden, and there was the evidence to back it up, and we had this outside perspective in the University of Washington's credibility. It wasn't just us making that, and oh my goodness, that opened doors. That really made people pay attention to us, and it changed the dynamic. Right, that was a significant thing that we did for sure.
Yeah. Now, just keeping the focus on Seattle, you and I worked together in the early 2000s, and at the time there was a very oppressive administration and public safety force that was really more enforcement than compliance, and really just trying to be more, they were more reactionary. And you initiated a campaign, and I know that you worked with a lot of the venue operators. And after and then you did the Day of the Music Died campaign, which I thought was so creative, and I think it probably had a big impact. You want to share that like campaign and what your goals were and how did it end up?
Yeah, well, and this is where you were really instrumental in a lot of this stuff. It was, early 2000s, and we were having a growth moment in Seattle, and it was pushing musicians out. And there were a lot of stories were coming in that were like musicians were leaving. They were going to Portland. They were going to Atlanta. Like that was a bit of a narrative that was running. while I was running the Office of Film and Music. And I remember the mayor at the time, Mayor Nichols, there was a really pretty negative story. It was a big national piece about Seattle's losing its music identity. And he was upset about it, and he shared the stories with me. He said, James, why is this happening? And I said, I had a pretty long run of frustration where I wasn't really making a difference, and I was losing. In fact, the story was accurate. Clubs were shutting down, all kinds of problems, and the enforcement, like you were talking about, was being way too heavy-handed. And so I kind of felt like I had nothing to lose at that point. I wasn't succeeding, and I basically just told the truth. I just said, it's your administration. And there were a whole bunch of people CC'd on the email. And I said, it's the administration. This is happening. You're shutting clubs down. You recognize the bad players, but then you punish the good players that are trying. We don't have any initiative going on. Every time I try to get traction, I get the door closes on me. I don't, I'm sorry. This is the best I can do. And I got called into the office, and I thought I was going to lose my job, and because I had really made a statement. And it was the deputy mayor, and he says, James, normally I would fire you for what you did, throwing people under the bus, but the mayor says we should do something different. He says, what do you want to do? So, James, tell me what you want to do. How do you want to fix this? Here you go. Make it, make the change. And I went, okay, well, the very first thing, and this is what I would recommend for any city that is trying to do this. Was the thing, is I said, I don't know what to do, but I do know who does. And that's the people at the front lines of the industry. So we need to gather them. We need to get the people that are running labels and struggling, that are running the venues, that are doing music education, that are the musicians, that are the producers, that are the unions. Let's bring them into the room and say, what can we do to help? And that's what we did. We gathered a bunch of people and led conversations and heard, and then distilled that down into what we thought we could take action on and make a difference, which ultimately became the City of Music Initiative. So we went from this horrible national story of, Seattle's losing it, to not so fast. And then and the mayor loved it. We kept the mayor briefed the entire time. We were informing the city council. The mayor was so bought into it that he could then direct his, departments and the department leaders to, hey, I like this, work with James, make things happen, which really influenced the nightlife initiative that we ended up creating, that you were a big part of, connecting hospitality and nightlife with music opportunities, because the City of Music initiative was so well supported, and we had very concrete ideas. It was built around, the three components, which we could talk more about, as I think are critical for a music scene. But that was it. That was the change. It was a bold move, but the big thing was just bringing the people who are doing the work, who are at the front lines of all of this, who are the ones that are really, the infrastructure of the whole thing, bringing them into the room and hearing them and listening to them, and then doing something, having a bias for action and make things happen, and getting political will in the entire time. That was the story. That was the launching pad.
Yeah, but I mentioned also, which I thought was a clever campaign, was where all of the venues put out a newspaper ad. This is when newspapers were relevant.
Yeah, right.
That said, the day the music died, and that all the venues at midnight shut off their music for a period of time, just to let people be part of a campaign.
Well, yeah. So the mayor had control of the departments, and the mayor had control of the people that ran those departments. But there are other elected officials, and there was one, a city attorney, who didn't quite appreciate what I was trying to do, didn't quite appreciate what the mayor was trying to do, and had a different agenda. And he continued to do his work, and to come down hard on enforcement. There were all kinds of motivations there. And in response, because I had organized the music industry, the music community, the musicians, and all the people in this kind of, this room, and people knew each other, and I was facilitating the connections, and they started feeling kind of this, reinvigorated strength. they decided to take matters into their own hands and went offline. And they basically said, if there was an election was coming up, so there was timing with that, and the city attorney was running for re-election, and yeah, they said if this person gets elected, let's demonstrate what Seattle's going to look like. So they coordinated across many, many, many clubs. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of clubs across the city, and coordinated a moment. I think it was like at 11:30 or something like that, and at midnight maybe. And at that moment, they all agreed they were going to stop the music, turn on the lights, and say, and then get on and make an announcement to the people in the room. This was dance clubs, this was music venues, this was bars, this was everything, and did that, and oh my goodness, it got a lot of attention. It
Yeah,
really,
plus it was
I,
part of an election campaign, and you basically listed all the candidates that you wanted to have elected, and in the end, they got elected. And I remember when
yeah,
I walked into the city hall with you and your nightlife people who really didn't look like people who were comfortable going to city hall. They walked through the rooms and council members came out and shook their hands. And then when we met with the city attorney and things were changing, I said, Why are you supporting this now?" And he said, "Because these guys got me elected, you know? I mean, and it was really a powerful way that you organized. Now, from there, you and I talked about music cities. We're going to run out of time here. I could talk with you forever. But you were the one that introduced me to the concept of music cities. And in 2007, we held our networking conference in New Orleans, and we had Jim Butler from Austin, and we had somebody from Athens, Georgia, and somebody from Montreal, and you and Jocelyn Kane from San Francisco. So, and somebody from New Orleans. We're all together to talk about what it takes to be a music city. Jan Ramsey, with
hmm
Offbeat Magazine was a participant in that. But that was when it was kind of like the idea of being a music city. It really was not a concept that was really moving very much. And I know you were trying to make it happen, but there were very
yeah,
few cities, yet alone states, that had some focus on music. So,
yeah.
what is it that you see back then that defined a music city, and how do you see it today?
Yeah. Well, that idea was born out of stealing from each other. So what, when in Seattle, all of a sudden we were given the keys and now like, what do you want to do? And so what we do is I'd call Jim Butler in Austin or, counterpart in some other city and say, hey, what are you doing down there that we can adopt and do it up here in Seattle? And then and I would say, to the mayor, I'd go, hey, Mr. Mayor, in Austin, they're doing this, and there's nothing like creating a little FOMO, creating a little tension to get action. And then people would do that same thing back with me in Seattle and what we were doing. And we just realized that we had a network and we were all served well by having all of us succeed. And that what became this kind of really an informal association of music cities. It largely our RHI was the platform for that. I mean, it wouldn't have existed without RHI. We used RHI as our platform for networking and trying to help each other. And that was how it was all formed. And we thought of ourselves as an association back then. When the elements that I think are really important, and this is my bias for what we did in Seattle that worked, and so there's other things too, but we created what we became known as the City of Music and this initiative. And it was built on three parts that I think are fundamental for a community to build its musical identity and its culture and its business and all of those things. And that was to be a city of musicians and to be a city of live music and to be a city of music business. And like city of musicians meant K through 12 education, like having music education built into the schools. And we advanced that initiative almost to every school having it in their curriculum, to having healthcare for musicians. So an organization was started called SMASH, Seattle Musicians Access to Sustainable Healthcare, like so that people can actually be healthy and support one another. Just recognize the value of music in every one of our lives, whether you wanted to be a professional musician or just be a musician and do your other job. So that's what that meant. Then the City of Live Music was all about venues, venues, venues. Everything becomes a venue. That's the airport initiative that we created, the City of Music Airport Initiative, and all of the live music that happens at the SeaTac Airport here came out of that, like recognizing the concourses as stages and venues that artists can make a living, making sure that the venues were healthy, that there was as many as possible. Live music is the keystone of the whole thing. It's where artists develop their craft and where audiences get developed and where people gather and where money is made. It's so critical. So it was about city and tourism, bringing tourists in and marketing our venues and all of that. That was what City of Live Music meant. And then City of Music Business was about having music at the table for workforce development initiatives, for incentive programs, for economic development, for revitalization efforts in neighborhoods or downtowns, that music could play a really important role in that. I mean, we all know the minute there's a cause happening in some community, one of the first go-to moves is to throw a concert with some famous musician, raise money, and solve a problem. Musicians are constantly being used in that way, and that's a good thing. But how can we use that in a broader sense than just these kind of one-off moments and be a little more proactive? So that's what City of Music Business meant, the record labels, the tech industry that we have in Seattle. At the time we have, Amazon Music, we have, KEXP is a radio station. So we put them in this incredible publicly owned facility on this campus called Seattle Center. And now they're broadcasting. They have over 1 billion views on YouTube of musicians, a quarter of which are from Seattle. They've expanded to other markets and they're broadcasting from Seattle. It gets, that's how we did that whole thing. So those three elements are, I believe, the pillars of a community, but there's other ways to do it too. But I think those are pretty critical.
Well, I mean, I could talk with you forever, James, but I'm hopeful that we'll have great conversations in Nashville, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And you have a great session with some leaders, I think, that are the evolution of your early work.
Absolutely. I mean, there are some really great music communities in this country, in the world. Nashville it might be the top. I mean, Nashville has just reinvented itself over and over and over again. You can't, every service person in the business is probably a professional musician, And actually, I think there's a really interesting connection that I'm excited to make in Nashville. And that is taking, Jim, what your work with the hospitality industry and the music industry or community and bringing that together and think most musicians, I would bet, this is just kind of me thinking this is true. I don't have the data to prove it, but it seems pretty true that most musicians pay the bills by doing some form of service in the hospitality business.
Hmm.
And if the hospitality industry thought of themselves as the stewards for musicians, actually thinking about it and creating the structure for musicians to actually develop their career in parallel to the service that they're providing in the hospitality industry, maybe even having other healthy ways for them to do that, flexible hours, just kind of really built into that. I think that's really magical. I think that's where it's already at, but it's not been formalized or thought about in any kind of like really growth kind of a way for both sides. And I think RHI in Nashville, I would like to explore that a little bit.
Well, that's a brilliant insight, James. As always, you just keep coming up with some great insights, but it's true. Music and hospitality go together. But,
Mhm.
another theme that we're exploring is that songwriting as storytelling, and that the reason that people gather, that music, in particular country music, is really identifying with people's life stories and to share
Yeah,
stories when they come together. Music is a magnet to bring people together to socialize. And
that's where it is.
it's the sociability, but also, going to Nashville, a lot of bartenders and servers are songwriters that are waiting for their opportunity to perform at the Bluebird and get their step up into the world of Garth Brooks and Taylor Swift and others who have started out as simple, ambitious songwriters in Nashville. Yeah. Well, thanks a
Yep.
lot for your time, James. And it's always insightful. You're always a brilliant orator and innovator.
Well, I'm excited to give back to anything I can, Jim, because the way I got here was through RHI. So this will be a fun conversation.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
All right. See you in Nashville.